Admiral Tae-woo Kim stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars through the massive viewport. His defense fleet floated in formation around the outer colonies, ready to protect human settlements from any threat. For 37 years, humanity had been part of the Galactic Council. They were the newest members, treated like children by the older alien races. The Velteron Empire controlled most of the Council. They were tall, pale beings who thought they were superior to everyone else. The Korthak hegemony provided the military muscle, brutal warriors with thick armor-like skin and no mercy in their hearts. Both groups saw humans as useful tools, nothing more. Tae-woo had fought alongside these aliens before. He knew they respected human courage in battle, but they never saw humans as equals. To them, Earth's children were good soldiers and clever engineers, but they lacked what the aliens called ancient wisdom. This always bothered Tae-woo, but he kept his opinions to himself. Dr. Minseo Park worked in her laboratory on Luna Station, studying alien biology and communication patterns. She had been monitoring Council transmissions for months, and what she found made her blood run cold. The Council wasn't just planning to limit human expansion anymore. They wanted to enslave humanity completely. Her fingers moved quickly across her computer as she decoded another encrypted message. The words on her screen confirmed her worst fears. The Council had decided that humans were growing too fast, learning too quickly and influencing too many of the younger alien races. They saw humanity as a threat that needed to be controlled before it was too late. On Nexus Prime, the Council's capital world, Ambassador Ji-won Lee sat in the great chamber where representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered. The building was enormous, built to impress visitors with the Council's power. Ancient pillars stretched toward a dome that showed the stars above, and holographic displays showed the vast territory under Council control. Supreme Chancellor Velrath Quineth called the session to order. His voice echoed through the chamber as he spoke in the formal language of Council proceedings. But Ji-won could hear the threat beneath his polite words. The human species has exceeded the boundaries set for junior members, the Chancellor announced. For the stability of galactic civilization, we require immediate compliance with new restrictions. The restrictions were not really restrictions at all. They were chains. Humanity would have to surrender all military vessels except for basic patrol ships. Human colonies could not expand beyond their current borders. Most importantly, all human technology development would be overseen by Council observers. Ji-won stood slowly, her dress uniform crisp and formal. She had prepared for this moment, hoping it would never come. The United Earth government rejects these terms, she said clearly. We will not surrender our sovereignty or our freedom. A murmur of shock went through the chamber. Junior species did not say no to the Council. They obeyed or faced consequences. Chancellor Quineth's pale face showed no emotion, but his eyes glittered with something dangerous. Then you have chosen the consequences, he said. Commander Hyunwoo Nam was stationed aboard Terra's shield, a massive defense platform orbiting Earth. He had joined the military to protect his family and his world. His younger sister Soo-young was studying medicine in Seoul, working toward her dream of becoming a doctor who could help people. When the alarms began screaming across the platform, Hyunwoo rushed to his battle station. The sensors showed ships dropping out of hyperspace around Earth. They weren't human ships. The Council had sent a fleet, but these weren't military targets they were approaching. Sir, the enemy ships are moving toward population centers, his sensor operator reported. Seoul, Tokyo, New York, they're targeting the cities. Hyunwoo felt his heart stop. The Council was supposed to follow the rules of warfare. Military targets only. Civilians were off limits according to every galactic treaty. But the ships on his screen were definitely heading for Earth's biggest cities. This has to be a mistake, he whispered. But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't. The Council had decided to make an example of humanity, and they were going to do it by killing innocent people. The first energy beam struck. Seoul at exactly 1432 Earth Standard Time. Hyunwoo watched on his screen as the city where his sister lived disappeared in a flash of white light. 12 million people died in seconds, including Soo-young Nam, who had been treating patients in a hospital when the beam hit. Tokyo was next. Then New York. 3 of Earth's greatest cities wiped out in minutes. The Council's message was clear: surrender or watch your world burn. But they had made a terrible mistake. They thought killing civilians would break human spirit. Instead, they had awakened something that had been sleeping in humanity's DNA for thousands of years: Captain Dokyung-oh commanded a mining ship in the asteroid belt when the news reached him. The Persistent Hope was just a cargo hauler, not a warship, but when he heard about the attack, something changed inside him. He opened a communication channel to every human ship and station he could reach. "They broke the line," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "The Council crossed the line that should never be crossed. They killed our families, our children, our innocent people. Now we break them all." The message spread like wildfire through human space. From the ice mines of Europa to the farming worlds around Alpha Centauri, humans heard Dokyung's words and felt the same fury burning in their hearts. Military ships changed course toward rally points. Civilian vessels began retrofitting themselves with weapons. Even merchant captains started planning ways to fight. The Council expected humanity to surrender after seeing the destruction of Earth's cities. They thought humans would beg for mercy and accept any terms to prevent more civilian deaths. They had studied human history and seen how other species reacted to overwhelming force. But they had misunderstood something fundamental about humanity. Humans were persistence hunters who had survived ice ages and world wars. They were the children of warriors who never learned to give up. And now, for the first time since joining the Council, they had been given a reason to show their true nature. Admiral Tae-woo Kim received reports from across human space. Every military unit was requesting permission to attack. Civilian leaders were calling for total war. The people of Earth, instead of cowering in fear, were demanding revenge for their dead. As he looked at the reports flooding his communication system, Tae-woo realized that the Council had made the worst possible mistake. They had united humanity in a way that nothing else could have. Every human in the galaxy now had the same goal: make the Council pay for what they had done. The war was about to begin, and it would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Dr. Yuna Choi had been waiting for this day her entire career. Deep in the Luna Research Station, she walked through laboratories that had been sealed for years. The Galactic Council had banned most of these research projects under their peace accords. They said advanced weapons were too dangerous for younger species to develop. Now the bans no longer mattered. Earth's burning cities had changed everything. "Begin production immediately," she told her team of scientists and engineers. "We're going to build every weapon the Council told us we couldn't have." Her fingers danced across holographic displays showing designs for nanobots that could think for themselves, bombs that used quantum mechanics to tear holes in space, and other devices that would make the Council's leaders wake up screaming. But her most dangerous weapon was something the aliens could never understand: human creativity unleashed from all restrictions. Major Yoon-hee. Cho sat in a small cafe on the trading world of Kepler 442b, sipping coffee and reading reports on her tablet. To anyone watching, she looked like an ordinary human merchant taking a break from business. They didn't know she was the leader of a network that stretched across Council space. For 20 years, humans had been quietly spreading throughout the galaxy. They worked as engineers, traders, technicians, and teachers on thousands of worlds. The Council saw them as harmless immigrants seeking better lives. They never suspected that many of these humans were actually soldiers, carefully placed and waiting for orders. Yoon-hee's communication device buzzed with coded messages from across the galaxy. On the mining world of Vega Prime, human workers were reporting the exact locations of military supply depots. On the resort planet of Altair Gardens, human staff members had mapped every government building and security system. Even on the heavily defended fortress worlds, human technicians had been quietly learning secrets and finding weaknesses. Phase 2 is ready, she transmitted back to Earth. All cells are in position. On the Council's most important fortress world, Veltara Prime, Chief Engineer Min-Soo Kang finished his daily maintenance of the planetary defense grid. He had spent 5 years earning the trust of his Veltaran supervisors. They praised his technical skills and reliability. They never suspected what he had really been doing. Every system he had touched contained hidden programs that only he could activate. The shields that protected the planet from attack could be turned off with a simple command from his personal communicator. The defensive satellites could be reprogrammed to attack targets on the surface instead of threats from space. Even the communication networks had backdoors that would let him control them remotely. Min-Soo looked up at the pale Veltaran officer who supervised his work. "All systems running perfectly, sir," he reported with a respectful bow. "No problems detected." The alien nodded approvingly and walked away. He had no idea that his most trusted human engineer had just finished turning the planet's entire defense system into a weapon that could be used against its builders. In the Council's intelligence headquarters on Nexus Prime, analyst Silgi Liam reviewed reports about human military activities. Her Korthak supervisor stood behind her, reading over her shoulder as she typed her assessment. "The humans are gathering their ships," she reported, making her voice sound worried. "But their fleet is small and outdated compared to our forces. 3 battle groups should be sufficient to crush their resistance." Her supervisor grunted approval. "Excellent work, Analyst Lim. Your evaluation confirms our strategic projections." What he didn't know was that Sulgi had been feeding the Council false information for months. The real size of the human fleet was much larger than her reports indicated. More importantly, the Council had no idea about the secret weapons being prepared on Luna Station or the network of agents ready to strike from within. Supreme Chancellor Velrath Quineth called an emergency meeting of the Council's military leaders. The Great War Room was filled with holographic displays showing Council territory and military assets. To the alien commanders, the situation looked simple. "The human tantrum will end quickly," the Chancellor announced. "They have seen our power demonstrated on their homeworld. When they realize resistance is hopeless, they will surrender and accept proper guidance." War leader Grextal of the Korthak hegemony agreed completely. "3 fleets will be sufficient," he declared, his armored fist striking the table. "We will destroy their pitiful navy and occupy their remaining worlds. This minor police action will be finished within days." The other council leaders nodded their agreement. They had fought wars against dozens of species over the centuries. Young races always made the same mistake. They thought courage could overcome superior technology in numbers. They always learned otherwise. None of them understood that humanity was different. They had never faced a species that treated war as a puzzle to be solved, rather than a contest of strength. They had never fought an enemy that could turn grief into cold, calculating fury. Deep in an asteroid field beyond Pluto, Fleet Admiral Jin Wook Bak stood in the command center of Omega Station. The facility had been built in total secrecy over 15 years, using mining ships and construction crews that officially didn't exist. The Council's intelligence services had no idea it was there. "Status report," he ordered. "All units responding, Admiral." His communications officer reported. 732 vessels confirmed ready. Another 200 still en route to rally points. The numbers were impressive, but Jin Wook knew they were misleading. Many of those vessels were civilian ships that had been quickly fitted with weapons. Miners, cargo haulers, and passenger liners were not proper warships. Under normal circumstances, they would be slaughtered by professional military forces. But these were not normal circumstances. Every human in space was fighting for the same thing now: revenge for the innocent dead. That gave them an advantage no military manual could measure. Dr. Kyung-ho Lee worked in a secure bunker beneath the ruins of Seoul, surrounded by quantum computers and tactical displays. As humanity's top strategic analyst, his job was to find ways to win an impossible war. The numbers were brutal. The Council had overwhelming advantages in ships, weapons, and military experience. But numbers only told part of the story. Kyung-ho had studied every recorded battle in galactic history, looking for patterns and weaknesses. The Council's military doctrine had not changed in centuries. They fought predictable campaigns against enemies who followed the same basic rules. Humanity would not follow those rules. They would fight in ways that would shock and confuse their enemies. More importantly, they would target the Council's greatest weakness: their absolute confidence in their own superiority. "Operation Fury Storm is ready," he reported to Admiral Bayek. "All assets in position. Estimated time to Council capitulation, 4 months. His staff members looked at him in amazement. 4 months seemed impossible against such odds. But Kyung-ho had seen something in the tactical projections that filled him with confidence. The Council had made their strategy clear when they chose to attack civilian targets. They believed fear was humanity's weakness. They were about to learn that fear could also be humanity's greatest weapon, when it was turned against those who thought themselves untouchable. Across human space, final preparations were being made. Weapons that had existed only in theory were being mass-produced in hidden factories. Soldiers were receiving orders that would have been unthinkable under the old rules of warfare. Civilians were being evacuated from areas that would soon become battlefields. The Galaxy was about to discover why humanity had conquered their own world despite being weaker and slower than most of the predators they had faced. They were about to learn that the most dangerous human trait was not their technology or their courage. It was their absolute refusal to accept that any fight was hopeless, especially when they were fighting for people who could not fight for themselves. The Council was still celebrating their easy victory over Earth's cities. They had no idea that the real war was about to begin. The attack began at exactly 06 Universal Standard Time across 57 star systems. Captain Da-Yoon Jung checked her instruments one final time aboard the stealth destroyer, Silent Vengeance. Her mission was simple: destroy the Korthak command ship Eternal Dominance or die trying. All crew prepare for quantum drive activation, she announced over the ship's communication system. Remember why we're here. Remember Seoul. Her crew of 38 volunteers had all lost family in the bombardment. They knew this was a suicide mission, but none of them cared. The experimental quantum drive would tear their ship apart the moment they used it, but it would take their target with them. The Silent Vengeance dropped out of hyperspace directly above the massive Korthak battleship. For a moment, both ships hung motionless in space. Then Da-Yoon activated the quantum drive. The explosion didn't just destroy both vessels. It tore a hole in space-time itself, creating a vortex that pulled in 3 more Korthak ships before collapsing. In seconds, the enemy fleet had lost its command vessel and 4 support ships to a single human destroyer. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out as humanity struck back with weapons and tactics the Council had never seen before. On Veltara Prime, Chief Engineer Min-Soo Kang sat at his workstation and activated the programs he had spent 5 years installing. The planet's defensive shields flickered once, then reversed their polarity. Instead of protecting the surface from attack, they began reflecting the planet's own defensive satellite beams back toward military installations. Within minutes, every Council base on Veltara Prime was burning wreckage. The aliens who had trusted Min-Soo with their most sensitive systems watched in horror as their own defenses destroyed them. The humans have turned our weapons against us, one Veltaran officer screamed into his communicator. How is this possible? Min-Soo stood up from his workstation and removed the Council insignia from his uniform. You should have thought about that before you killed our children, he said calmly, then walked toward the emergency exit as explosions shook the building around him. Commander Hyunwoo Nam piloted the delivery ship Remembrance toward the Council fleet assembled near Jupiter. His cargo hold contained millions of Dr. Yuna Choi's nanobots, each one smaller than a virus but smarter than most biological brains. The mission would kill him, but his sister Soo-young was already dead. Nothing else mattered now. All ships, this is Remembrance, he broadcast on all frequencies. Beginning final approach. Remember the innocent. The Council ships opened fire as soon as they detected his approach, but Hyunwoo had disabled his ship's shields and weapon systems. All power went to speed in the cargo bay doors. The enemy beams tore through his hull, but he stayed on course until the final second. When Remembrance exploded, it released its nanobots in a cloud that spread across the entire enemy formation. The microscopic machines didn't just disable the alien ships, they reprogrammed their computers, turning weapon systems against their own crews while broadcasting footage of Seoul's destruction on every screen and speaker. Within an hour, 12 Council ships were either destroyed or captured by their own converted systems. The survivors retreated in panic, reporting that the humans had unleashed demon machines that could think and kill on their own. Colonel Bora Han led her unit of Solar Marines in a boarding action against the battle station Dark Nexus. The Council had never faced human soldiers fighting with nothing left to lose. Her Marines moved through the station's corridors like natural disasters, destroying everything in their path. When the enemy commander offered to surrender, Bora shook her head. You don't get to surrender, she told him. You killed civilians. That means you fight until you're dead or we are. The battle raged for 6 hours. When her forces were finally cornered in the station's reactor room with no way out, Bora made the decision that would become legend throughout human space. All Marines, prepare to overload the reactor, she ordered. If we can't take this station, we'll make sure no one else can use it either. Her soldiers obeyed without question. The explosion that followed destroyed the entire battle station and everyone on it. But it also sent a clear message to the Council. Humans would rather die fighting than live as slaves. Pilot Jamin Shin's fighter had lost power and weapons during the battle for the Rigel system. His ship was drifting helplessly toward the Council Dreadnought Absolute Authority when he saw an opportunity. The enemy vessel's bridge was clearly visible through its transparent armor plating. "This is Lightning 7, he broadcast to his squadron. "I'm going to ram the bridge. Tell my family I died protecting them." His damaged fighter struck the Dreadnought's command center at nearly light speed. The impact killed Jamin instantly, but it also killed every senior officer on the enemy ship. Within minutes, similar sacrifice attacks were happening across the battle zone as human pilots chose death over defeat. The Council forces had never seen anything like it. Their military doctrine assumed that rational beings would surrender when faced with hopeless odds. They had no strategies for fighting an enemy that welcomed death if it meant hurting their opponents. Supreme Chancellor Velrath Quineth received reports in his private chambers on Nexus Prime. Each one brought worse news than the last. Human forces were not just fighting. They were winning through tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. "Sir, we have received evacuation requests from 17 member worlds," his aide reported nervously. "Our allies are saying they cannot defend against these human berserker attacks." The Chancellor's pale hands shook as he read the reports. Entire fleets were abandoning their posts rather than face human forces. Ship crews were mutinying rather than fight an enemy that seemed immune to fear. Some Council worlds were already discussing separate peace negotiations. For the first time in his long life, Velrath Quineth felt genuine terror. The Council had started this war to demonstrate their power over a junior species. Instead, they had awakened something that might destroy them all. Intelligence Officer Sulgi Lim continued her work at Council headquarters, but now she was feeding information directly to human forces instead of hiding it. Her reports confirmed what the Council leadership was beginning to realize this was not going to be a quick police action. Forces are demonstrating unprecedented aggression levels, she wrote in her latest assessment. Recommendation: immediate peace negotiations before casualty rates become unacceptable. Her Korthak supervisor read the report and roared in frustration. "Peace negotiations with inferiors? Never. We will crush them with overwhelming force." But Solgi could see the fear in his eyes. The mighty Korthak hegemony, which had conquered hundreds of worlds, was terrified of a species they had dismissed as harmless. The humans had done something no other race had ever achieved. They had made the Council afraid. Admiral Taewoo Kim coordinated the offensive from Omega Station, watching as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Human forces were suffering heavy casualties, but they were achieving their objectives. More importantly, they were breaking the enemy's will to fight. "Sir, we're receiving surrender offers from 14 different Council commanders," his communications officer reported. "They're asking for terms." "No terms," Taewoo replied coldly. "They chose to target civilians. Now they face the consequences. All human forces are to continue attacking until the Council leadership surrenders unconditionally." The message went out to every human ship and unit. The war would continue until the aliens who had killed innocent people paid the full price for their crimes. The galaxy was about to learn that some lines should never be crossed, especially when dealing with a species that valued justice over survival. In the depths of space, the first phase of humanity's revenge was complete, but this was only the beginning. The Council had awakened something in human nature that would not rest until every wrong had been answered and every debt had been paid in full. The rebellion began on Threxus Prime when Ambassador Jiwan Lee's broadcast reached the mining colonies. For 300 years, the Threxian people had been slaves to the Council, working in dangerous mines to extract rare metals for their masters. They had never dared to resist because resistance meant death. But now they heard a human voice promising something they had never dared to hope for: freedom. "Stand with us," Jiwan's message declared, "and never kneel again. Humanity remembers its friends and never abandons those who fight beside us." Within hours, Threxian workers across 12 worlds had seized control of mining equipment and turned it into weapons. Their crude tools were no match for Council military forces, but their courage inspired other enslaved species throughout the galaxy. Commander Sangwook-O received orders to support the Threxian uprising. His mixed fleet of human destroyers and converted cargo ships jumped into the Kalar 9 system, where the Council operated its most brutal prison world. Thousands of political prisoners from dozens of species were held there under conditions that violated every law of civilized treatment. "All ships, prepare for orbital assault," Sang-Wook ordered. "We're going to free every prisoner on that planet." The battle was swift and terrible. Human Marines landed with fury that shocked even their Threxian allies. They had seen the prison records. Children separated from families, intellectuals tortured for asking questions, entire populations enslaved for refusing council demands. Every cell they opened released more evidence of the council's cruelty. The Threxian fighters who joined the assault channeled 3 centuries of suppressed rage. They fought with picks and mining lasers against trained soldiers, but their hatred gave them strength. When the prison's main complex finally fell, over 50,000 prisoners walked free for the first time in decades. News of the liberation spread faster than council forces could stop it. On 40 different worlds, enslaved species began their own uprisings. The council had used fear to control the galaxy for centuries, but humanity had shown that the powerful could be defeated if their victims fought together. Dr. Minseo Park worked feverishly in her laboratory aboard the research vessel New Hope. Her latest creation was perhaps the most devastating weapon humanity had ever developed, not because it killed, but because it revealed truth. The virus she had designed infected council communication networks without causing any physical damage. Instead, it forced every screen, speaker, and holographic display in council territory to show the same images. Footage of the bombardment of Earth's cities, recordings of torture sessions in council prisons, and evidence of the systematic oppression that kept billions of beings in slavery. "Release the virus," she ordered her technical team. "Let the galaxy see what the council really is." Within days, the truth was spreading across thousands of worlds. Council citizens who had never questioned their government's actions watched in horror as they learned what had been done in their names. Protests began on the core worlds. Some council species began withdrawing their support from the war effort. The virus was more than just propaganda. It was a weapon that turned the council's own communication systems against them. Military commanders found their orders being replaced with human messages. Propaganda broadcasts became testimonies from freed prisoners. Even private conversations were interrupted by evidence of council war crimes. Admiral Tae-Woo Kim stood before the assembled captains of humanity's secret fleet. These ships had been built in the darkness beyond known space, using technologies the council had banned and principles they couldn't understand. Each vessel was powered by controlled black holes and armed with weapons that could tear apart the fabric of space itself. "Today we reveal what humanity has really been building," he announced. The council thought they were watching our every move. They were wrong. The secret fleet emerged from hyperspace in 30 different star systems simultaneously. Council forces found themselves facing ships that shouldn't have existed, weapons that violated the laws of physics, and humans who had been preparing for this war longer than anyone realized. The Yamato-class battleship Eternal Fury engaged a council dreadnought 3 times its size and reduced it to scrap metal in minutes. The destroyer Swift Vengeance used its quantum torpedoes to destroy an entire enemy squadron before they could even target it. Most terrifying of all was the carrier Endless Night, which launched fighters that moved faster than light and struck without warning. War leader Grextel watched his formations disintegrate on the tactical displays. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were demonstrating technological superiority that should have been impossible for such a young species. "How did they develop such advanced weapons without our knowledge?" he demanded. His intelligence officers had no answers. The council's spies had been watching human military development for decades, but somehow they had missed the construction of an entire secret fleet. The humans had been planning this war from the moment they joined the galactic community. But it was Dr. Kyung-Ho Lee who delivered the most shocking blow of all. From his command bunker beneath Seoul's ruins, he activated Protocol Omega, the most closely guarded secret in human space. Every civilian vessel in the galaxy carrying human crew or passengers suddenly revealed its true nature. Cargo ships extended weapon systems that had been hidden in their holds. Passenger liners launched attack craft that had been disguised as lifeboats. Even small pleasure craft began broadcasting targeting data to human military forces. For 40 years, humanity had been seeding the galaxy with weapons platforms disguised as innocent civilian vessels. Every trade route, every shipping lane, every major spaceport suddenly became a potential battleground under human control. Within 6 hours, every Council facility capable of producing antimatter weapons was destroyed by ships that had seemed harmless just hours before. The aliens realized that they had been living surrounded by human weapons for decades without knowing it. Captain Do Kyung-oh, now commanding the captured Council battleship Retribution, broadcast humanity's final ultimatum to every world in the galaxy. Behind him stood the flags of 20 different species that had joined the rebellion against Council rule. "You wanted to make us kneel," his voice carried across the stars. "Instead, you taught us that some things are worth any sacrifice. Surrender now or watch your civilization burn like ours did." The message was accompanied by images that told the story of the war. Earth's devastated cities proved that humans remembered their dead. But footage of liberated prison worlds and freed slaves showed that they also remembered their duty to the innocent. The contrast was unmistakable. Humanity had suffered terribly, but they had transformed their pain into something greater. They had become the protectors that the galaxy desperately needed. Supreme Chancellor Velrath Quineth locked himself in his private chambers as reports of defeat poured in from every front. The Council's 1,000-year reign was crumbling, destroyed by a species they had dismissed as primitive. His own allies were abandoning him as human forces drew closer to the core worlds. On his desk lay a small device that would end his life instantly. Beside it was a message he was preparing for the human leaders. He had 2 choices: face trial for his crimes or take the coward's way out. The Chancellor's hands shook as he picked up the suicide device. He had started this war to demonstrate Council superiority. Instead, he had proven that even the mightiest empire could fall when it chose to target the innocent. The device activated with a soft click. His final words, recorded for history, would haunt the galaxy for generations. "We awakened demons believing them to be angels. May our children forgive us for what we have done." Across Council space, the sounds of surrender began to echo. Species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia were asking for mercy from the humans they had tried to enslave. The old order was dying, and something new was being born from its ashes. But humanity's fury was far from satisfied. The Council's leadership might be broken, but justice had not yet been served. The galaxy was about to learn that humans distinguished between victory and vengeance, and they intended to have both. Fleet Admiral Jinwook Baek stood on the bridge of the Terran flagship as the last Council military commander signed the surrender documents. The war had lasted 8 months, but it felt like a lifetime. The cost had been enormous: millions of human lives, dozens of worlds damaged, and scars that would take generations to heal. But humanity had won completely. The Galactic Council no longer existed as a governing body. Every species that had participated in the bombardment of Earth was now under human military occupation. The galaxy had learned what happened when innocent civilians were targeted. "Admiral, we're receiving final casualty reports," his aide announced. 3.7 million human military personnel killed in action. Estimated enemy casualties exceed 40 million. Jinwook nodded grimly. The numbers told the story of humanity's fury. For every human who died, more than 10 Council soldiers had paid the price. But those numbers also included civilian casualties on worlds that had resisted too long. War was always ugly, even when it was justified. "What about the tribunals?" he asked. Admiral Taewoo Kim reports that preparations are complete. The trials will begin next week on Terra Nova. The war crimes tribunals would be broadcast across the galaxy. Every species would see that humanity sought justice, not revenge. Soldiers who had simply followed orders would be treated fairly according to the laws of war. But commanders who had targeted civilians would face the full weight of human justice. Admiral Taewoo Kim reviewed the files of the first defendants as he prepared for the tribunals. The list included war leader Grextal, who had planned the bombardment of Earth's cities, and General Velchris Thane, who had ordered the destruction of the hospital ships near Alpha Centauri. The trials would be conducted according to human legal principles, with full due process and the right to defend themselves. Some people thought this was too generous, but Taewoo understood the importance of showing the galaxy that humans were better than their enemies. "Justice must be seen to be done," he told the assembled judges and prosecutors. "We are not barbarians. We do not seek revenge. We seek accountability." The first trial began with war leader Grextal, the Korthak commander who had boasted about destroying Earth's cities. The evidence against him was overwhelming. recorded communications, eyewitness testimony, and his own proud admission of targeting civilians. When asked to explain his actions, Grextal showed no remorse. "I followed the traditions of warfare that have ruled this galaxy for 1,000 years, he declared. "The strong rule the weak. That is the natural order." The human prosecutor, Colonel Minju Park, stood to deliver her response. "The natural order has changed," she said quietly. "Species that target innocent civilians now face extinction. That is humanity's promise to the galaxy." Grextal was sentenced to life imprisonment on a prison world where he would spend the rest of his days thinking about the children he had killed. Similar sentences were handed down to other council commanders who had committed war crimes, but not all the trials ended in punishment. Captain Velshan Kori of the Veltaran Navy had refused orders to bombard civilian targets, even knowing it would mean court-martial by his own government. The human tribunal not only cleared him of all charges, but offered him a position in the new Galactic Defense Force. Dr. Yuna Choi led the massive reconstruction effort that followed the military victory. Her teams worked on hundreds of worlds, rebuilding cities that had been destroyed in the fighting. But these new settlements incorporated defensive technologies that would prevent another surprise attack. "We're not just rebuilding," she explained to the Council of Liberated Species. "We're building better. Every world will have the means to defend itself against tyrants." The new cities featured shield generators that could protect entire continents, automated defense systems that could respond to threats in seconds, and communication networks that could not be jammed or controlled by hostile forces. Never again would the galaxy's innocent civilians be defenseless. Ambassador Jiwan Li worked tirelessly to establish the Free Species Alliance, a new organization to replace the fallen council. Unlike its predecessor, the FSA was built on principles of equality and mutual defense rather than domination by the strongest. "Members, every species has the right to determine its own destiny," she declared at the founding ceremony. "But any attack on civilian populations by member species will result in immediate intervention by the Alliance Defense Force." The new charter included provisions that would have been unthinkable under the old council. Species could withdraw from the Alliance at any time. Military service was voluntary. Most importantly, the targeting of civilians was defined as a crime against all sentient life, punishable by complete military response. Humanity found itself as the reluctant leader of this new galactic order. They had not sought power, but their victory had made them responsible for maintaining peace. It was a burden they accepted with characteristic determination. General Bora Han, promoted after her heroic sacrifice at Dark Nexus, trained the new Alliance military forces. Her doctrine was simple and clear: fight with honor, protect the innocent, but never show mercy to those who target civilians. The Alliance military academies taught the lessons of the Council War to every new generation of officers. They studied human tactics not just for their effectiveness, but for the principles behind them. The galaxy's future defenders learned that true strength came from protecting the weak, not exploiting them. Commander Hyunwoo Nam, haunted by his sister's death but strengthened by humanity's victory, established the Memorial Fleet. These ships were crewed by humans who had lost family in the bombardment, and their mission was to patrol the galaxy, ensuring that no species ever again faced the choice between slavery and extinction. The Memorial Fleet's flagship was named Soo-Young's Hope, after Hyunwoo's sister, and all the other innocents who had died in Earth's burning cities. The ship's mission statement was simple: "We remember the fallen by protecting the living." Dr. Minseo Park became the Alliance's first chief science officer, overseeing technological development with one paramount goal: ensuring that freedom-loving species always maintained superiority over potential tyrants. Her research teams developed new forms of faster-than-light communication, defensive technologies that could protect entire star systems, and most importantly, ways to detect aggressive military buildups before they became threats. The galaxy settled into a new peace, but it was a peace maintained by strength and vigilance rather than oppression and fear. The Alliance grew as more species requested membership, drawn by the promise of protection and self-determination. 50 years after the Council War, Captain Soo-Young Nam commanded the battleship Fury Remembered. She had been named after her great-aunt, the medical student who died in Seoul's bombardment, and she carried on the family tradition of service to humanity and the galaxy. When reports reached her of a new expansionist empire in the Outer Rim, threatening civilian populations on the frontier worlds, her response was swift and decisive. The Alliance fleet jumped to hyperspace within hours, carrying weapons that made the Council's old arsenal look primitive. The Kethmoran Empire had been building its forces in secret for decades, believing that the galaxy had grown soft under Alliance rule. They planned to conquer the outer colonies and use civilian hostages to prevent retaliation. They discovered their mistake when Suyung's fleet arrived at their capital world. The Alliance ultimatum was broadcast on all frequencies. Release all hostages immediately and surrender your military forces, or face the consequences that await all who threaten innocent life. When the Kethmoran leaders refused, confident in their superior numbers, they learned the same lesson the Council had learned 50 years before. Humanity had not grown soft with victory. They had grown stronger, more determined, and better equipped to protect those who could not protect themselves. The Kethmoran War lasted exactly 17 days. When it ended, another empire that had chosen to target civilians was reduced to rubble, its leaders facing Alliance justice and its former subjects freed to determine their own futures. On Terra Nova, in the great memorial hall where the names of Earth's dead were carved in stone, a new inscription was added below the original dedication. It read, "Here lies the civilization that taught humanity there are fates worse than death." They broke the line. Humanity broke them all. The inscription continued, "Let all who see these words remember, the galaxy's innocent are under humanity's protection. We have shown mercy to the repentant and justice to the guilty, but those who target civilians will face our fury until the stars themselves burn out." The warning echoed through space, carried by Alliance patrol ships to every corner of the galaxy. It was carved into monuments on 1,000 worlds, broadcast on communication networks that reached every sentient species, and taught to every child old enough to understand the difference between right and wrong. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity forgave much and tolerated even more, but those who harmed innocent people faced a species that transformed grief into unstoppable determination. The Galactic Council had learned too late that some lines should never be crossed. Now the galaxy lived under humanity's protection, and the innocent could sleep peacefully knowing that Earth,